Welcome everyone. So today we're talking about Purim, and Purim is a very unique holiday in a lot of ways. Purim is considered to be, it's called the last of the holidays that is written in the Tanakh, written in the Torah. And we're going to see a lot about this because Purim really is the holiday that's going to bring us through the time of this exile into the end of time, in the end of days. Purim is called the dawn. It's called Yelt HaShachar in Hebrew. It's the dawn. It is the time that is like a hint of the problems that are going to happen in the future and the resolution. And so this is very relevant to today, because there's a certain darkness around Purim time, and Purim is the light at the end of the tunnel. Okay, so I want to really understand this about Purim to get into a little bit. We talked about last time, a few weeks ago, about the idea of the hidden miracles, which is our time. But I want to get into a little bit more deeply the root of the issue, which was that in Purim, there was a movement to destroy the Jewish people. We're going to see that is the movement of evil raising its head up. That's what it is. Let's understand. So today I want to understand what are the roots of evil? What's the root of evil? And how does that play out in Purim? And how does that affect the world today? That's what we're going to talk about. It's a big topic. It's very relevant. It's relevant to what's going on in the world right now also, which we'll discuss briefly at the end. Okay, so let's understand here. The first is an amazing thing. Before I say that, I just want to just say one thing, which is interesting, that, I would ask you a question. You think the world's better off now than it was 1,000 years ago? What do you think? I think people are more...
Technologically, for sure.
What's that? Technologically, for sure. Morally. So there's an issue here. Many nations were barbaric, and now they are more civilized. So in that way, maybe evil has had a positive change, that people become more civilized. But there's a confusion now of evil. And I really want us to understand it, because in general, we can't listen to what we're hearing in the news, in the media. There's a skewing of understanding that we need to be people of understanding and see through various lies, because it's all mixed up right now. I'm going to start with Purim, and we're going to see what this evil is, how it comes out today, what the root of it is, and what we're dealing with. So it's very, very heavy, very powerful. So like this, the Talmud asks a question. It says, where do you find Haman, written out in the Torah? Okay, where is it written in the 5 books? Now, who is Haman? Haman is, in the story of Purim, he is the guy who wanted to kill the Jews, eradicate them. He was Hitler of the time. He wanted to destroy, kill every single Jew. That's literally what it was. It was in a previous Holocaust, and he wanted to kill every single Jew. So the Talmud says, where do you find him in the 5 books of the Torah? Which is a very funny question, because he happens 1,000 years later than the Torah was given, more than that. So what does it mean that where do you find him in the Torah? The answer is everything's hinted at in the Torah. So we got to find this person, Haman, his name, his who he was, what it was about, hinted at in the Torah. Where do you find it? So it's an amazing answer. The Talmud says, it says that when Adam and Eve were in the Garden of Eden, and they were convinced to eat the tree of knowledge of good and evil, then what happened was that they realized they were not clothed, whatever that means, and they were hiding. And then God spoke to Adam, and he said, Hamina eitz, did you eat from the tree I told you not to eat? Now, the word hamin, from, did you eat from the tree? The word hamin is the same word as Haman, just pronounced differently, spelled the same way. So where do you find Haman? You find him in the Garden of Eden. In the question that God asked, did you eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil? What does that mean? So this evil is way, way back in the beginning of time. We got to understand it because it's been there the whole time and it pops its head up in every generation higher and higher until it's going to be removed. The story of Purim is removing of that evil, but that is what pops its head up. Now, but it's very weird because the word Haman appears in what God says to Adam and Eve, did you eat from the tree? It appears in what God said back to him. Why is that? Now, let's understand what was happening in the Garden of Eden, and let's understand the root of evil. In the Garden of Eden, there's the idea that God said, don't eat the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Whatever it means, the serpent convinced them, whatever it means, he spoke, didn't speak, that's not for now. But the statement that it says in the Torah itself was, if you eat from the tree, you will be Elohim, you will be like God. That was the draw. That was the attraction. You know, everyone wants to run their own business. I don't want someone to be my boss, tell me what to do. So the serpent says, you could be like God. You know, he ate this tree and he could create worlds. You can create worlds too. You could be like God. And that was the original attraction, that a person wants to be separate, independent, be their own boss, their own God. Now, that was the allure. Now watch something that's amazing. So why is it that God, when God says back to Adam, did you eat from the tree? That's where we find the word Haman. Why wouldn't it be when Adam first ate from the tree? Why is it when God says, did you eat the tree? So I see Rod has his grandson there. So there's a game that kids play. And I know my kids played this game, and maybe your kids, maybe your grandkids play this game. It's an amazing game. The kid goes and says, covers their eyes and says, you can't see me. You can't see me. Now, we know that's not true. We can see the kid. The kid can't see us. But because the kid can't see us, they believe that we can't see them. That's the way the world works. I can't see you, must be you can't see me. What happened? When Adam and Eve ate the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and they thought God couldn't see them, the whole world reflected and looked as if God wasn't seeing them. So God says, did you eat the tree? God knows he ate the tree. What kind of question is that? But the question is that the world looks now like it's out of control. Because you can't see God, it looks to you, he doesn't see you. That's where this evil of Haman exists. It exists in the very beginning of time, when people want to be their own God and they separate. Now, once they separate, they say, okay, now I don't see you, and you don't see me. The world's a free-for-all. That's the beginning. And we're going to see how this is the root of evil, how we have to do the opposite, and what Haman was trying to do. And now we're going to go through all of history. So this is great, because we're going to see history unfolding before our very eyes. So let's get a little deeper here. Now, Haman was from a certain nation. What nation was he from? He was from a nation called Amalek. Amalek. Now, this nation has a very, very bad history. Very, very bad history. Let's talk about the history that we see in the books of the Torah, and then we'll understand what this is. And then we'll see, can we identify Amalek today? Because they're still out there, even though we don't know who they are. But there's some telltale signs of who they are. So this nation that Haman comes from is called Amalek. Where do we see them really popping their head up? When the Jews left Egypt. When the Jews left Egypt, they're about to come into the Holy Land. Okay? They cross the Red Sea, the sea splits, and then they get to the other side. And Amalek, this nation, decides to attack them. Okay, war is terrible, understand? But why was that so bad? What were they doing? I mean, imagine you're living in a world. I mean, our world today, imagine you just saw the 10 plagues, these miracles, the whole world is what's going on. And then you hear this nation coming to the Red Sea, the sea splitting, and God's bringing them to the Holy Land. What would you do if you were part of that world? You know what you'd all do here? You would say, okay, how can I be part of this? How can I help this, right? That's what everyone would do. It's why you're on this call. Because you'd say, wow, I see that this is clear. God's running the world. And he just split the Red Sea, did these 10 plagues, took this nation out. No one's ever left Egypt before because they were like the society with their pyramids and their mummies, and they're a cult. No one ever left, and a whole nation just leaves with these miracles. Wow, okay, I want to be part of this. That's not what Amalek said. They said, I want to fight them. Now, why would they want to fight them? Wouldn't you, if you would see the side of right and good and truth, wouldn't you want to be part of it? Right? So the answer is like this. The example that the sages give is like this. It's like a person sees a boiling hot bath. So he jumps in the bathtub. He knows he's going to get burnt, but he's going to cool the bathtub for everybody else. That's what Amalek did. They knew they were going to lose the war. They knew they weren't going to beat the Jews. They knew Hashem was bringing them out of Egypt. They knew they were going to lose. But if they can attack, then in people's minds, they'll say, you know what? Well, this thing is not invincible. This is not really God. This is okay, fine. So the Jews got lucky and they were fighting a war and whatever. But we could fight against them. That would be the mindset that they would create. And that's why they were on a suicide mission. It's incredible because none of us can even understand this. It's like, yeah, well, if you know it's wrong, why do you want to? Because there was a problem. They could not go and deal with this idea that the Jewish people, God was going to bring them into the Holy Land and change the world and bring the world to a greater place of perfection. And so they knew they were going to lose, but they knew that by throwing questions and doubts, and maybe it's not God, and maybe it's an accident, and maybe it's that, they would temper the world from going into this whole level of saying, well, we see this God in the world and we want to be part of it. That was their mission. Okay, now how do they do this? What's their methodology? Now, the methodology is an amazing, amazing thing. And it says in the text. The text says that God says, remember what Amalek did to you when they attacked you when you came out of Egypt. Remember what they did. Never forget what they did. It says, Asher karcha b'derech. They happened to meet you along the road. Now, I don't know if anyone here is a military expert or not, but I kind of imagine if I'm fighting a war, I'm planning it out pretty well. And I kind of imagine that I'm not really just happen to meet somebody along the way and fight with them. That's not how I do it. I literally plan this and I attack. What does it mean they happen to meet you? Amalek's philosophy, they said into the world, is it's all an accident. Everything is random. Does this kind of sound like the philosophy of the world today? I mean, you guys know what we're saying. Amalek was the first ones to come up with the idea that things are random. They happen to happen. That's it. They happen to meet you. The sages tell us the numerical value of the word Amalek is the same as the Hebrew word safek, which means doubt. They throw doubt into something. You guys got all excited. God took the Jews out of Egypt. This is amazing. No, maybe not. Maybe it's just an accident. Maybe it's kind of freak things happened. Really? That is Amalek's approach, is the idea of randomness. That's why it happened. Just luck, random. That's their methodology. Now, I want to share with you here, because this is going to be very bizarre. I don't know if you know this, and I'm going to share this with you because you can't even say this. It's bizarre. The Jewish people have a requirement to be compassionate in every type of way. But there is a commandment to destroy this nation of Amalek. How could that be? We love everyone. Well, we destroy the nation of Amalek. We have to understand that there are certain telltale signs of this nation that decided to make their entire mission to go and to get God out of the picture and to fight all good by saying, no, there's no plan here. There's no purpose in the world. I'm going to tell you now, I'll tell you as we go on, but there's one telltale sign of who Amalek is. One sign that you can know when someone is Amalek. You know what it is? It's bizarre. It's the sign of what the Nazis did. Because Amalek really are the Nazis. That's what it is. The Nazis were Amalek. How do I know that? How can I know how can I know? I don't do a genealogical test. How do I know the Nazis were Amalek? The answer is very simple. Because there's one telltale sign of who is Amalek. And that is, just like Amalek were willing to fight the Jews when they're coming to the land of Egypt, out of Egypt, coming to the land of Israel, because they wanted to fight truth and goodness, even though they were going to lose, the telltale sign of Amalek is that even if I will get hurt, it's more important, my mission, to fight these people that represent God and truth in the world. That's even who the Nazis were. Because the Nazis, when they had a choice to send their arms and the weapons to fight the war effort, or to use the trains and the trucks to transport Jews to kill them, they chose to transport Jews to kill them. Because that was their mission. Their mission was, I got to fight against this idea of God in the world. And the Jewish people being the messengers to bring God's message in the world. It's amazing. I mean, we can't even imagine this, but we have to, because, ladies and gentlemen, it's really still amongst us, and we need to understand this is the story of Purim. So let me tell you here a little bit who Amalek was. Who was this person originally? Like who was he? I know the nation, but who was the first guy named Amalek? You know the first guy named Amalek was? He was the grandson of Esau. Esav had a son named Eliphaz. Now, Eliphaz was Esav's son, so he had learned Torah by his grandfather, Yitzchak, Isaac. He was a guy who, he maybe wasn't, a great person, but he had something special about him. He knew Torah, he knew a lot of stuff. He one day sits his son Amalek down on his knees and tells him, my son Amalek, I want to tell you what you got to do in life. Here it is. Here's what you got to do. The Jewish people are going to bring God into the world, and you have to assist. You got to become part of that mission. That's what you got to do. Like everyone here, I want to be part of this mission of bringing God into the world, truth and righteousness and goodness in the world. And that's what Eliphaz told his son Amalek. Help the Jewish people in this process. You know what Amalek said? I'm going to be second. I'm going to help them. I'm going to be second fill to them. No way. My whole mission is going to be now to go and to fight these people, to uproot them. I can't. I'm not playing backup here. I'm not going to do that. And therefore, he made his whole mission in life to fight against God and therefore God's people. Okay, I have to get rid of this. Now, how am I? The way he does it is by talking about, oh, everything is random. It's not God running the world. I'm not even sure if there is a God. Maybe it's an accident. Who said? How do you know? Maybe just, there was an explosion of a prebiotic soup and it created this world. You don't know it's God. And if there is, doesn't matter. Everything's random. Forget about it. This was the philosophy of Amalek, and it was the philosophy of the Nazis. And it was a philosophy of Haman in the story of Purim. He wanted to kill the Jews because he said, listen, these guys are representing God in the world, bringing God. We don't want that. I want to kill every single one of them. That was his plan. Now, there was a time in history where a Jewish king was commanded to fight Amalek and to destroy them. And that was going to lead to building the temple and to coming to a time of truth. You know who that king was? That was the first Jewish king called Shaul, Saul. And he couldn't do it. He couldn't do it. There's got to be something good in them. I can't do it. You're fighting against the Nazis, but still, you're a compassionate person. It's got to be goodness. I can't go and he couldn't do that. He left over what he thought was the best of them all, the king of God. And from there, his descendant came out to be Haman. And that evil popped up again. That's exactly what happened. And now the story is the great-great-grandchildren of the King Shaul are Mordecai and Esther of the story of Purim. And now Haman picks his head up again and says, I want to wipe out the Jewish people. That's what he says. Now, I want to understand with you a second here. What's the root of this bad trait? I mean, I know I said that the way it comes out is by saying everything's random, and I know that, but what's the root of this trait? I want to tell you something amazing. We try to go and work on our personality traits. And you got to realize something. In Hebrew, the word for trait is called midot. Midot means measurements. It doesn't mean traits. You know why? Because measurements generally are not good or bad. You don't go to the store to buy a jacket and you say, I want a size 42 long. And the guy says, that's an evil size. No, it's a trait. You could use it for good or for bad. So let's say a person is stingy. Well, that's bad. Let's say they're a spendthrift. Well, that's also not good. But, there's some times where you can get to the middle and sometimes say, no, I'm not spending money on this because it's not worth it. And here, it's worth it. I'll give money here. That's called the middle path. In life, you want to say, all of my traits, every trait I have, I could use it for good or bad. Everything. A person has desire. Can desire be used for good? You bet. Sure it can. Every trait can be used for good. And that's why Maimonides says, in every trait, you want the middle road. You don't want to be too much this and too much that. You have to know how to play it. So if you're a spendthrift, then then be very frugal for a while. Be very thrifty for a while, and then you'll get back to the middle. There are two traits that he says you got to stay away from. Two traits you can't go near. You know what they are? Haughtiness and anger. Why? I'll tell you why. Because when I think I am the boss, we go back to the story of the snake in the Garden of Eden. You could be God. The haughtiness means I make my own reality. I don't want anyone telling me what reality is. I don't need God to tell me the reality. That's a Molech. I'm God. I'm the boss. Haughtiness. And you know what anger, think about anger a second. You know what makes us angry? What makes us angry is like this. Well, I want something and someone gets in my way. So we get angry. The sages tell us that's like worshiping idols. You know why? Because if you realize God runs the world, then you realize it's not this guy blocking you, there's other things blocking. But when I get angry, it means that I am determining the reality and nothing could stop me because I am the boss. The root of the problem is when a person says, I dictate reality, not God. I gotta tell you, ladies and gentlemen, this is happening in our world so clearly all the time. You got to realize this. I'm not. There's not a politics class, but you look at the movements, the trans movements, the this, the that. What it all comes down to is we will determine what is the reality, what's right and wrong. God's not going to tell me you're a man, you're a woman. That's no. That's passe. That's old school. That we don't want that anymore. We determine. We'll dictate. We'll create the reality. That is the root of the problem of a Molech. A Molech is like the snake in the Garden of Eden. I'm not going to emulate God. I'm going to be the one to determine it. You know, there's an amazing thing. It says that we are supposed to emulate God, to be like God. And that's a great power in a person to say, I want to be like someone. I want to be like God. And it's a commandment. It's a commandment to say, just like he's compassionate, we should be compassionate. We emulate him. Okay? That's different than saying, well, I'm like God, and therefore I'm the boss. Those are two very, very different beliefs, but they're very, very close. Right? And so when the snake says, and the serpent says, you could be like God, well, yeah, in a certain sense, that's a good thing. To emulate, to act like godly is a commandment. It's a great thing. But then when it's, no, I want to be like God, I want to dictate myself. I have the haughtiness, I have the power. That is me. That's already the world of a Molech. That's their reality. And that's why it's an amazing, amazing thing. The word Amalek, if you take the letters and you flip it around, or you just abbreviate it, it stands for Amal. Amal means the work, and the letter Hebrew is Kof, means monkey. It's the work of the monkey. What does that mean? What does that mean? What is a monkey? A monkey imitates. That's what a monkey does. So one way to imitate is to emulate, to be like. One is that, no, I'm going to just act in a way that is my own reality. The work of the monkey, you know, there's an amazing thing if you think about it. I think I mentioned recently in this class. When Darwin came out with his theory of evolution, so Aldous Huxley said he finally gave an atheist the ability to pick his head up and make sense. You're not a godly creation of a purpose. You come from a monkey. It's all random. It's all just an accident. There is no plan. We dictate the world. That is the philosophy of a Molech, and it is prevalent in the world. And the story of Purim is an amazing thing. It says that they wanted to kill the Jews, and what happened was that Haman sent out the messages first from Achashverosh to kill the Jews on one day, the 13th of the month of Adar. Okay. Then the whole story happens, and Queen Esther reveals she's Jewish, and the whole thing turns on Haman. And the king says, listen, I can't retract my royal decree. That's the rule. That's the rule in Persia. It was a royal decree. I can't retract it. But what you could do is you could write another decree, whatever you want to write about the Jews. So the Jews wrote a second decree and said in the king's name, the Jews could stand up and defend themselves against everyone that's attacking them. That's what they could do. On the 13th of Adar, when all the nations are going to gather to kill them, they could stand up and defend themselves, and the king supports the Jews. In the story of the Megillah, you know how many people the Jews killed on that day? 75,000 people. That's unbelievable. Now, I gotta ask you a question. Who were these 75,000 people? If you got a message from the king that any enemy who stands up against the Jews can fight back and kill them, and the king supports the Jews, he just made the queen Esther, she's the queen, he gave the Mordechai, who's the leader, he gave him Haman's house, the king. So what kind of crazy person would now be going to fight against the Jews when the king just said that I support the Jews and they have the ability to fight back? You know who would do that? Only one nation in the world would do that. Amalek. And all 75,000 people that were killed were this nation of Amalek. They were Nazis, literally. I'm not even speaking figuratively, because when we talk about a nation, we can't imagine what this means that a nation would be. Think about it as an ideology. When somebody has the beliefs of evil in the world, that Nazi belief, that's called Amalek. And ladies and gentlemen, you need to fight that. I got to tell you something. It said that Shaul, the first king, couldn't bring himself to destroying them. He couldn't do it. And the Talmud says, whoever is compassionate on cruel people, on terrorists, on Nazis, in the end, he will be cruel on compassionate people. That's what happened. The whole story of Shaul later on, he killed this righteous city of Kohanim. It was a terrible story there. But what happened was, if you see a person who is really on that level, we don't know who they are. We don't know who they are. But if you see a person on that level, then what happens is that if that's a Molech, that's got to be taken out of the world. When you try to do a terrorist, people that want to kill and just are anti anything that is good, they want to be their own Godhead. That evil is always removed before goodness comes. If you look in the story in the Torah, when it's the chapter that it says the Torah is given in, right? What chapter in the Torah, what parsha is our Ten Commandments given? I always say this, I said this recently to Rabbi, and also said it before, it's given in the parsha of Yitro. Now, who is Yitro? Who is Jethro? Yitro was a non-Jew who was the leader of all the idolatry in the world, who converted. So why is the Torah portion, when they get the Ten Commandments, we call it Ten Commandments? Why is it called the portion of Jethro? The answer is because the ability to get good first requires you to fight evil. That's the story of Purim. Purim is the last month of the year. It's dark. It's leading us into the end of time where it's dark and it's confused. And the only way that goodness comes is first fighting evil. The Jews had to remove this evil, this Nazism, this anti-God, this anti-goodness philosophy in the world that's why they were able to build a second temple right after this. And that's going to happen today also. And that is not just happening once in history, it happens every year. What we have to do now as Purim is coming is say, I want to emulate God. I want to be godlike. Okay? I want to figure out that just like he's compassionate, I need to be compassionate. I don't want to go and separate myself and say, I am the one who's going to dictate. That's a Molech. And every year that we get to this point, when we work on ourselves and we remove the Amalek in ourselves, which means the own ability to say, I want to be my own Godhead and I'm going to, we actually start to remove that evil from the world. That's literally what's happening today. That is the story of Purim. The story of Purim is the story of the end of time, where there's a lot of darkness, a lot of evil, a lot of things that are popping their head up, and they're exposed to be what they are. Now, I wanna talk about this, connect a second to what's going on in the world right now. And I can't tell you exactly, last week Rod asked me about how do we pray for the situation? And I said a few things, and I want to flesh it out a second here. And I don't want you to misunderstand me. It's certainly clear that Russia is the aggressor, and why they're doing it, this and that, what politically should be done. Maybe we'll talk about it, maybe we won't. I think I think we're making a big mistake here. I think that the West is giving Ukraine we like watching TV, so these are the heroes now, and they're giving them this hope of fighting, and Russia's going to destroy the whole place. And I hate to say it, but I think that the Jewish president, I think the anti-Semitism in Ukraine when this is over is going to be even greater than it is now, because I think they're going to get their country destroyed. I just, America, as probably rightfully so in terms of politics, is saying, well, we're going to give you arms, and they're willing to fight, help fight to the last Ukrainian soldier. They don't want to get involved in a world war, nuclear world war. That's probably smart. But everyone is so locked into their reality, they can't figure out how to deal with it. I don't know what happened yesterday. You had Bennett, who's the Prime Minister of Israel, trying to negotiate, which would be smart. If Ukraine was probably set up as a neutral area, because Russia's not going to tolerate Ukraine being a Western place at their doorstep. They're not going to tolerate being part of the EU. That's not going to happen. So you need a little bit of intelligence how to deal with the situation, not to create it at a spiral that's going to get out of control, because you're doubling down. You just see the world in your way, which is unfortunately American policy, Western policy. This is not going well. There's not depth of understanding of the political situation. But saying that, just simply put, yeah, Russia's obviously the aggressor, and there's terrible things. There are Jews in Ukraine, and there are righteous people in Ukraine. And I think that, there are organizations collecting money that I know we can, I donate to the Orthodox Union, who's collecting money for Ukraine, for the Ukrainian Jews and for the righteous people there to deal with that. And that's something that our prayers need to be for, and our efforts. But I have to say this, and again, I'm not supporting what Russia's doing. Of course, it's heinous, but you have to also remember the news that we're hearing is very skewed in terms of what things are. I don't know if you heard of the Azov Brigade. Have you heard of the Azov Brigade in Ukraine? The Azov Battalion is a part of the army of Ukraine that are neo-Nazis. They are an official part of the Ukrainian army that are neo-Nazis. That's why in Putin's rhetoric, he's able to say, we're coming for the denazification of Ukraine. That's not what he's doing. What he's doing. that's a game. That's ridiculous. It's Russian propaganda. But he's able to say it because there are major pockets of Amalek that are there. I'm sure on both sides. The Ukrainians and the Russians, in a certain sense, one of Putin's claims is they are one people, which they are. Now, again, who is a Maleki today? Who are these evil Nazis? I don't know. But they do pick their heads up when they propout Nazi philosophy. And that is happening right now in the world. And so what do? We have to look for helping people of good intent and have to understand that what our job here is to realize there really is, and I hate to say, because I'm a person that tries to look at the good in everyone, every single situation. That's one of the things I do, how I run my synagogue, and how I try to relate to see. But it's so hard for us to imagine. But the idea of a Moloch is there really is evil. There are people that have taken a Nazi philosophy of evil in the world, and that has to be dealt with. You cannot go and just say, oh, that's okay, that's okay, that's okay. It's not. It's really not. So how we politically deal with that, I have some ideas. Maybe we'll put on the question and answer. That's not my point today. My point today is like this, is we need to recognize the root of evil. And it's real. And where it comes from is all the way back in the Garden of Eden. It comes from the beginning of time, where there's an idea that I will be a separate entity, and I don't want to be like God. I want to be God. I want to dictate. What Hitler said, it's amazing. People have to read it. He wrote in Mein Kampf. He said the Jews brought two scars to the world: the scar of the body, called the circumcision, and the scar of the mind, called the consciousness. I'm sorry, called conscience. A moral conscience. That's what the Jew brought to the world, a moral conscience, and Hitler hated them for it. He wrote that in Mein Kampf. They brought the idea of right and wrong in the world, and I don't accept that. I will determine. The Aryan belief is might will determine right. That's evil. And that started way, way back in the very beginning of time. And it keeps popping its head up. And therefore, we can't be fooled by the media, and we can't be fooled by rhetoric, and we can't be fooled by liars. We need to say the true position is, I don't want to become my own God. I want to emulate God. As he is compassionate, I will be compassionate. As he gives kindness, I will give kindness. That's the source of all existence, and the separation of it is the beginning of the evil of a Molech that plagued us then, and it plagues us now. And Purim is the removal of that, which will usher in a time of real goodness.